Imagine this. You're left on red. You're criticized unfairly. You walk into a room and feel the cold shoulder from someone you used to mean everything to, and yet you don't flinch. Not because you've become numb, but because you've become solid. Because your inner world is no longer determined by the noise outside of you. What if silence didn't unsettle you? What if rejection didn't shake you? What if misunderstandings didn't turn into internal warfare? Now take a breath and ask yourself this. What if your emotional pain isn't actually caused by what happens, but by how untrained your nervous system is to handle it? Because here's the truth, most people never realize. The problem is not that people are rude. It's not that the world is unfair. It's not even that you feel deeply. It's that no one taught you how to carry those feelings without collapsing under them. So today, we're going to change that. We're going to train something more powerful than your voice, more powerful than your reactions. We're going to train your emotional gravity. Let's begin. We're living in the loudest generation in history. Every feeling is broadcast. Every opinion is urgent. Every discomfort is public. We've turned social media into a stage, but what we're performing is emotional instability. We've been taught to confuse instant reaction with authenticity. If you don't respond right away, you're cold. If you don't post how you feel, you're hiding something. If you don't defend yourself, you must be guilty. But none of that is strength. It's just noise. It's just panic. It's just fear dressed up as expression. Stoicism offers an alternative. Not to shut down. Not to pretend you don't care. But to develop the kind of emotional strength that doesn't get pulled into every current. To feel deeply, without being dragged violently. To care, without collapsing. To notice, without needing to react. See, being sensitive isn't the enemy. Being untrained is. No one teaches you how to breathe through a trigger, how to pause when misunderstood, how to stay rooted when someone's mood changes around you. Instead, we've been conditioned to turn every discomfort into a crisis, every silence into a sign, every delay into a rejection. And that's why today matters. Because we're not just going to talk about peace, we're going to build it, one strategy at a time. Not in theory, but in practice. Because emotional mastery is no longer optional in a world designed to provoke you. Most people misunderstand peace. They think it's a reward, something that shows up after the storm, after the drama fades, after everyone starts treating you better. They imagine peace as a vacation, something external, something earned. Once life finally starts cooperating, but that's a fantasy. Real peace is not a reward. It's a practice, and the reason most people never feel it is because they're not practicing it. They're reacting, exploding, panicking, then wondering why life feels so unstable. Let me ask you this. If peace only exists in your life when things are quiet, is that really peace? Or just a temporary escape? Because true peace isn't quietness outside of you. It's the stillness. you hold inside, even when the world is anything but still. Think about it. You wake up and someone leaves you on read. Your chest tightens. You start crafting mental stories. You open social media and see something triggering. Your mood drops. You start spiraling. Now, multiply that by 30 moments a day. And you wonder why you're exhausted. Here's the hard truth. If you don't train your nervous system to pause, the world will train it to panic. That's why Stoics didn't just talk about peace. They trained for it, just like warriors trained for battle, because they knew peace is a discipline. It's built, not found, earned, not inherited. And the building starts in the most boring, unnoticed moments. Moments like when someone cuts you off in traffic, when a coworker takes credit for your work, when your partner says something sharp, when your child screams for no reason. It's in those moments where peace is either strengthened or sabotaged. Let me give you a simple Stoic ritual. One you can use every single day. It's called the pause ritual. Step 1, stop. Not later. Not after they apologize. Not when it's convenient. Now, interrupt the automatic loop. Step 2, breathe. Not the shallow kind. Not the fake sigh. A real, full, slow breath. In through the nose. Hold for 2 seconds. Out through the mouth. Let your body catch up to your mind. Step 3, redirect. Ask, what would the calmest version of me do right now? Not the petty version, not the ego-driven version. The version you're training to become. You'll be amazed how many unnecessary battles disappear in that pause. How many arguments evaporate. How many regrets you never have to apologize for. This is the power of stillness. Practiced. Marcus Aurelius put it best when he wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." Notice he didn't say, "You might find strength." He said, "You will." Because the moment you stop reacting and start observing, you break the loop. You shift from victim to strategist. Let me give you an example. A man gets into an argument with his girlfriend. She says something cold. He feels it sting. His body tenses. His mind races. His old habit, snap back. Escalate. Prove a point. But this time, he pauses. Just 3 seconds. Breathes. Asks, is what I'm about to say necessary, helpful, or just emotional release? He says nothing, just nods, walks away. Later, they talk calmly. No emotional damage, no cleanup. That's peace in action. And no, it's not easy. It goes against your reflexes, your pride, your impulse. But that's the whole point. It's a discipline, one you choose. In the fire, not outside of it. So next time something shakes you, pause, breathe, redirect. And remember, you're not suppressing emotion. You're steering it, guiding it, channeling it with strength. Because peace doesn't mean weakness. It means choosing. Not to be controlled. Not by people. Not by chaos. Not even by your own emotions. And the more you choose it, the more it becomes you. This is Stoic power. Not loud, not dramatic, but unshakable. And that is how you become untouchable. There's a dangerous myth circulating in modern culture, subtle but seductive. It whispers, the more emotionally raw you are, the more authentic you must be. That if you cry openly, react intensely, or collapse publicly, you're being real. But here's the truth most people don't want to hear. Emotional chaos is not depth. Being overwhelmed is not power. And sensitivity is not a free pass to lose control. There's a difference between feeling deeply and bleeding on everything you touch. One shows strength. The other leaks insecurity. Emotional depth isn't measured by how loudly you react. It's measured by how well you hold what others can't even recognize within themselves. It's not about dramatizing pain. It's about dignifying it. True strength is this: you feel everything. But you don't need to broadcast it. You observe your triggers. But you don't obey them. You hear the noise. But you choose stillness. That's what separates warriors of the mind from emotional casualties of the moment. But here's where most people fall apart. They mistake emotional reactivity for emotional honesty. They live in an endless loop of interpreting, assuming, overanalyzing, where every silence is suspicious, every pause is personal. Every delay becomes a story of rejection. And that loop has a name: the emotional echo chamber. Let's break it down. Someone doesn't reply fast enough to you, feel ignored. You feel ignored to you, assume they're pulling away. You assume distance. You start panicking. You panic to you. Replay every detail of the last conversation. That replay leads to overthinking, doubt, insecurity, and spiraling. All without a single fact. No one said anything. No one did anything. The story was written by your own emotional momentum. This is overfeeling. When emotions outrun truth. When reaction replaces reflection. When feelings get treated like facts. And this is why the Stoics were ruthless with their emotional discipline. Seneca said it best: we suffer more in imagination than in reality. And he wasn't exaggerating. Most of your pain doesn't come from life itself. It comes from the meaning you assign to it. And most of that meaning isn't grounded in anything real. Which brings us to something the modern world desperately needs: the emotional boundaries of meaning. You don't have to make everything mean something. You don't have to decode every word, every delay, every look. Not everything is about you. Not every shift is sabotage. Not every silence is rejection. The Stoic builds space between the event and the interpretation, between the trigger and the story. And in that space, power lives. Sanity lives. freedom lives. It doesn't mean you shut off your heart. It means you give your mind permission to lead. It means caring strategically, responding intentionally, and feeling without drowning. Here's a truth most people avoid. You're allowed to sit with discomfort without performing it. You're allowed to be unsure without spiraling. You're allowed to feel pain without building an identity around it. Because when you can feel, but not flinch, when you can care, but not collapse, you become unshakable. You become like a mountain, not because the wind doesn't blow, but because you don't move with it. So next time the anxiety hits, when the overthinking starts to spiral, don't ask, "Why am I like this?" Ask, "Is this true or just loud?" That one shift in awareness can redirect your entire emotional pattern. It can be the difference between reacting impulsively and responding powerfully. And over time, that one habit becomes your armor, your calm, your control. Because in a world addicted to overreaction, the most dangerous man in the room is the one who stays quiet, centered. Be like the rock on which the waves crash. It stands firm, and the raging of the sea falls still around it. Stillness terrifies most people, not because it's empty, but because in the silence you start to hear yourself. And that is what most people are running from. We've been conditioned by noise, stimulation, chaos to equate movement with progress, reaction with relevance, and silence with danger. You check your phone, not because there's something important, but because the silence is unbearable. You scroll, reply, tap, binge just to fill the space that makes you feel exposed. But here's the truth. Silence is not emptiness. Stillness is not absence. It's presence. It's the place where your real self starts speaking. The part of you that doesn't yell, doesn't beg, doesn't perform. But we rarely hear it because we've trained our nervous system to interpret calm as a threat. Let that sink in. Your mind says, "I want peace," but your body flinches the moment it arrives. Because somewhere along the way you learned that noise meant safety, that chaos meant connection, that stimulation meant survival. So when everything goes quiet, your system panics. This is not a personality flaw. It's a pattern, a wiring. And the Stoics understood this long before we had the language for it. When Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Nowhere you can go is more peaceful, more free of interruptions than your own soul," he wasn't talking about some mystical escape. He was describing a mental state trained through stillness, sharpened through solitude. But how do you reach that state? When your nervous system screams the moment you slow down, here's the answer. You rehearse stillness. Like a warrior rehearses restraint. Like a monk sharpens silence. This is not about doing nothing. It's about facing everything without flinching, without reaching, without numbing. Here's how, every day. Set. Así de 3, 5 minutes. Sit. No music. No scrolling. No solving. No reacting. Just sit and observe. Your heart will race. Your mind will wander. You'll feel the impulse to move, to fix, to escape. Let it come. Let it pass. Don't judge it. Just stay. This is stillness rehearsal. A sacred moment where you retrain your nervous system to understand calm is not abandonment. Quiet is not punishment. Silence is not danger. At first, it feels unbearable. Then, it becomes neutral. Then, it becomes a refuge. And eventually, you crave it. You defend it. You become dangerous without ever raising your voice. Because you've mastered what most people avoid their entire lives, the ability to sit in stillness without losing yourself. And from that stillness comes clearer decisions, stronger boundaries, sharper presence, unshakable energy. You stop reacting to every twitch in the world because you're no longer ruled by the tremors inside you. You become the calm in the room, not because life got easier, but because you stopped needing it to be loud. And that's what makes you powerful. Not what you say, but what you withhold. Not what you fix, but what you endure. Not what you chase, but what you can sit with quietly. He who is brave is free, but he who is still is untouchable. Modern Stoic adaptation. The loudest voice in your life isn't your boss, isn't your ex, isn't society. It's the voice inside your own mind, the one narrating every moment, every failure, every fear. That voice determines everything. You could be in a peaceful room, surrounded by love, blessed beyond measure, and still feel unsafe if your inner dialogue is hostile. Or you could be alone, uncertain, under pressure, and feel calm, focused, powerful. If your inner voice speaks with clarity and command, everything starts with that voice. Because how you speak to yourself becomes how you survive yourself. But here's the problem. Most people don't have an inner commander. They have an inner critic. A bully disguised as self-awareness. A saboteur masked as humility. It says things like, "You always mess things up." People will leave when they see the real you. Who do you think you are to try this? And we mistake that voice for truth. We call it being realistic. But it's not realistic. It's rehearsed pain on autopilot. The Stoics understood this inner war well. Marcus Aurelius wrote in his Meditations, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." Notice he didn't say, "Get rid of the thoughts." He said, "Master them. Command them." So how do you do that? It starts with one shift. Reframe the question. Most people, when life hits hard, ask, "Why is this happening to me?" And that question traps you in victimhood. It gives your inner critic the mic. But a Stoic reframes, "What is this trying to teach me?" And suddenly, you move from helpless to strategic, from emotional to elevated. This simple reframe isn't just psychological, it's neurological. Because every time you choose a better question, you prune the neural pathways of self-sabotage and reinforce the circuits of inner leadership. You stop reacting and start responding. This is the essence of inner command. And it's not about being delusional. It's about being disciplined, training your inner voice, like a soldier, until it only speaks from logic, purpose, and precision. Here's a practice. When your mind spirals, don't fight the thought. Don't drown in it either. Just ask, is this the voice of fear or the voice of focus? Is this my critic or my commander? And then choose who speaks next. You get to assign the voice of leadership. You get to script the next sentence in your mind. And in that choice lies your power. The real enemy was never outside. It was the voice you let dominate your mind without ever questioning its credentials. But now, you no longer follow that voice blindly. You lead it. And when you master your inner dialogue, you become immune to noise, unmoved by praise, unbroken by criticism. You become sovereign. The man who conquers others is strong. The man who conquers himself is unstoppable. Lao Tzu, echoed by every Stoic who ever lived. There's a rare kind of power that doesn't announce itself. It doesn't raise its voice. It doesn't rush to explain. It doesn't need the last word. That power is emotional sovereignty, and it starts the moment you stop giving people unfiltered access to your nervous system. See, most people operate like open tabs. Every comment, every look, every message spins them out of control. They think silence means defeat, that not responding means they're being disrespected. But in Stoicism, we learn the opposite. Stillness is not surrender. Silence is not weakness. And not reacting is not losing. It's choosing. Choosing what deserves your peace. Choosing who gets your time. Choosing when your soul is worth more than someone's misunderstanding. Let's break the illusion. You don't owe people instant replies. You don't owe them a defensive paragraph to clarify your silence. You don't owe them emotional proof that you're still good. What you do owe is loyalty to your own center. That's what emotional sovereignty is. It's not about shutting down. It's about becoming the gatekeeper of your own inner weather. Let me give you a real-world scenario. You see a message. It's short, sharp, maybe even passive-aggressive. You pose. You don't reply immediately. Minutes turn into hours. Now the follow-up comes in. Why are you ignoring me? Are you mad at me? Can you at least say something? And here's the trap. They want you to come down from your throne to meet their storm. But you don't have to. You can breathe. You can observe. You can ask the one question that flips the power dynamic. Is this mine? Because what's happening isn't really about you. It's about their insecurity, their projections, their addiction to instant emotional validation. And the moment you realize that, you become free. This is the not mine technique, a mental filter, a boundary built from discernment, not distance. When something triggers you, before reacting, ask, does this emotional weight belong to me, or am I just carrying it for someone else? You'd be shocked at how much anxiety, tension, guilt was never yours to begin with. Maybe it was their childhood trauma, their fear of abandonment, their need to control what they can't understand, and they're throwing it at you. hoping you'll absorb it. But you're not their emotional sponge. You're not their emotional punching bag. You're the master of your own reaction. And that, in a chaotic world, is rare power. Let's revisit Marcus Aurelius. You always have the power to have no opinion. There is never a need to respond. In modern terms, you can see the message and not respond. You can be misunderstood and stay calm. You can be provoked and not be baited. Because your nervous system is not a public playground. It's a sacred space, and not everyone gets access. In fact, the more peace you embody, the more people will try to test it. Why? Because inner calm is intimidating. Because silence feels like rejection to those who crave chaos. But that's not your burden. Your job is not to babysit someone else's triggers. Your job is to govern your own internal kingdom. And sometimes the strongest move isn't to fight back. It's to simply walk away without leaving a trace of your emotion behind. When they see you, unmoved, unreadable, unreachable, they'll realize they can't pull you down. And they'll back off. That's sovereignty. Not reacting. Not explaining. Not justifying. Just being. Centered. Calm. Clear. He who angers you controls you. So let no one control you. But your reason. Epictetus, let them wander. Let them spiral. Let them fill the silence with their own noise. You'll be busy building a life where peace is non-negotiable and access to your emotions is earned. Because you don't owe everyone a reaction, but you owe yourself your peace every time. Some of the strongest people you'll ever meet are also the most sensitive. But their strength doesn't come despite that sensitivity. It comes because they learned how to wield it with boundaries. In a noisy, reactive world, sensitivity often feels like a weakness. You feel everything. You notice the tone shift. You pick up the unspoken tension in the room. You sense when someone's energy changes before they even say a word. And if you don't know how to handle that, it becomes a curse. You absorb people's moods. You carry burdens that aren't yours. You spiral from a single look or message. And before you know it, your mind becomes a battleground for everyone else's chaos. But here's the Stoic reframe. Sensitivity is a gift, but only when paired with discipline. Think of it like a tuning fork. You're finely attuned. You pick up subtle frequencies most people miss. That's not weakness. That's precision. But the tuning fork doesn't become the sound. It simply vibrates and returns to stillness. That's the power of boundaried sensitivity. You can feel deeply without becoming emotionally hijacked. You can sense truth without reacting to noise. You can stay present without being pulled into every storm. Let's get practical. Someone close to you unloads their negativity on you again. You feel it all, the guilt, the anger, the blame. But instead of absorbing it, you pause. You ask yourself, am I here to witness or to carry? You witness. You validate. But you don't internalize. That's emotional alchemy. Stoics understood this well. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "If you are distressed by anything external, the pain is not due to the thing itself, but to your estimate of it, and this you have the power to revoke at any moment." Translation: sensitivity isn't the enemy. Attachment to what you absorb is. So here's your new strategy. Feel everything, but absorb selectively. Because being a sponge is not a virtue. Being a mirror is not strength. Being a grounded, attuned presence. That's where the real power lives. And this applies in every arena. In relationships, you sense distance. But instead of panicking, you ask deeper questions. At work, you feel the tension in the team. But you lead with clarity, not chaos. In conflict, you pick up the emotional undercurrents. But you don't mirror the hostility. You stay calm. You stay grounded. You stay tuned, but sovereign. This is the new definition of strength: sensitive, but not shaken. Open, but not flooded. Aware, but not consumed. And the truth is, the more sensitive you are, the more boundaries you must have. Because your nervous system is not meant to be a battleground. It's a temple. And a temple has walls not to shut the world out, but to protect what's sacred within. So, if you've ever been told you're too sensitive, you overthink everything, you take things too personally, flip the script. Yes, I feel. I notice. I care. But I also protect. I also choose. I also walk away when peace costs too much. That's not being cold. That's being wise. The goal isn't to numb yourself. It's to become so clear inside that you don't need to shut the world out. You simply don't let it hijack your peace. In the end, be sensitive, but don't be absorbent. Let the world vibrate around you, but stay tuned to your own stillness. That's when sensitivity becomes a superpower, not because you feel less, but because you finally learn to feel without drowning. There's a difference between being protected and being imprisoned. And that difference lies in what you build around your emotions, a wall or a boundary. Most people don't know the difference. They get hurt, so they shut down. They get betrayed, so they stop trusting. They get overwhelmed, so they disappear emotionally. That's not power. That's avoidance dressed as protection. A wall is built from fear, pain, and past trauma. It says, never again. No one gets in. But here's the problem. Walls don't just keep danger out. They also keep love, growth, and healing out. You become emotionally isolated, unable to receive what your heart still secretly longs for. That's not strength. That's emotional exile. But a boundary, that's different. A boundary is built from clarity, self-respect, and inner wisdom. It doesn't say, go away. It says, this is who I am. This is what I allow. And this is how I protect my peace. Stoicism doesn't teach you to be cold. It teaches you to be centered. It's not about cutting people off. It's about choosing who gets access to your energy. Not from spite, but from strategy. Let's break it down with a simple rule. Walls are reactive. Boundaries are intentional. Asterisk. Asterisk. And that intention is what gives you power, quiet, grounded, sovereign power. One of the best techniques you can use to build real emotional boundaries is the 3C rule, AG clear. You must communicate your limits without ambiguity. Don't expect people to guess what you need. Say it plainly, kindly, and firmly. I need time to think before I respond. I'm not available for this kind of conversation right now. That comment crossed a line for me. Unclear. People get unclear results. Clarity protects you. Calm. Enforce your boundaries without emotional spikes. You don't need to yell. You don't need to explain your whole life story. You don't need to prove your pain. Powerful people don't scream. They speak calmly, and people listen, because their tone says, this is not up for negotiation. Consistent. Boundaries are not one-time statements. They are a lifestyle. If you fold every time someone pushes, you don't have a boundary. You have a wish. Consistency builds credibility, and credibility builds respect. So here's the uncomfortable truth. People don't always respect boundaries, but they do learn how to treat you based on what you consistently allow. Let that sink in. Boundaries are not about changing other people. They're about training yourself to stop betraying your own peace just to maintain connection. And when you live from that place, from clear, calm, consistent self-respect, something shifts. You stop over-explaining. You stop apologizing for your needs. You stop managing everyone else's emotions and start managing your own. And that is emotional maturity. Remember, the goal is not to stop feeling, it's to stop leaking. Don't shut your heart down just to survive. Open it with wisdom, shield it with truth, and guard it with boundaries, not bricks. Because a wall says, I don't trust the world. A boundary says, I trust myself. And in the end, that's the real fortress. Here's something most people never realize. Not everything people do is about you. In fact, very little of it is. But when someone's cold, when someone ghosts you, when someone snaps at you, your mind wants to make it personal. What did I do wrong? Why don't they care? What's wrong with me? And that's how the cycle starts. You begin to absorb their behavior as proof of your worth. Their silence becomes your anxiety. Their disrespect becomes your identity. Their pain becomes your prison. But here's the truth. Most never hear. People don't act from logic. They act from their wounds, their tone, their distance, their attitude. It's not a mirror of your value. It's a mirror of their unresolved pain. The Stoics had a term for this mental discipline to separate externals from the self. In other words, just because someone is angry doesn't mean you caused it. Just because someone withdrew doesn't mean you failed. Just because someone is inconsistent doesn't mean you're unworthy. Their behavior is a story, but it's their story, not your script to carry. That's why Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Choose not to be harmed, and you won't be." Don't let your mind make things worse than they are. He wasn't saying, ignore mistreatment. He was saying, don't fuse your identity with their dysfunction. When someone disrespects you, it reveals them, not you. When someone withholds love, it exposes their fear, not your lack. So next time your emotions start spiraling from someone else's behavior, pause and remind yourself this mantra. It's about them, not me. Repeat it like armor. Say it when you're about to overthink a short text reply. Say it when someone gives you a dirty look. Say it when someone criticizes you out of nowhere. This isn't delusion, it's emotional separation. It's how you protect your inner state from the chaos of other people's unprocessed wounds. And make no mistake, this isn't about letting people off the hook. It's about freeing yourself from their emotional grip. You can hold people accountable without letting their actions infect your identity. So let's reframe. Someone raised their voice. That's their lack of regulation. Someone ghosted you. That's their fear of connection. Someone disrespected you. That's their broken value system. And here's the Stoic mastery. You observe it. You name it. You don't absorb it. It's the same way you'd watch a thunderstorm through the window. You see it, but you don't stand in the rain. The more you practice this, the stronger your emotional boundary becomes. Not a wall, not numbness, but a quiet, invisible line that says, I see your storm, but I won't lose myself in it. And that's what makes you untouchable. Because when you stop personalizing everything, you stop bleeding from other people's wounds. You stop letting their chaos write your narrative. You stop assigning your worth to their emotional weather. And in that stillness, in that clean separation between what they do and who you are, you reclaim your power. Remember this. You don't need to carry what they never had the strength to heal. Let them own their wounds. You own your peace. There's a modern misunderstanding, one that quietly punishes strength and rewards chaos. In today's world, if you speak with heat, if you argue the loudest, if you snap back immediately, you're seen as real, passionate, even powerful. But if you pause, if you stay still, if you respond with controlled silence, they say you're cold, detached, uncaring. But here's what they don't understand. Calm is not indifference. Calm is authority. Because anyone can react. Anyone can scream. Anyone can throw emotional punches when they feel threatened. But the one who stays grounded, the one who lets the storm pass without raising their voice, the one who doesn't flinch in the face of provocation, that's the one in control. That's the one with real power. Not the loudest person in the room, but the most centered. The Stoics understood this centuries ago. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "If someone can prove me wrong, I will gladly change. But if they're just being difficult, I will remain silent." That's not apathy. That's strategy. That's emotional sovereignty. See, when you're calm, you're not denying the intensity of a moment. You're choosing to rise above it. It's the ultimate flex to know what someone is trying to do to trigger you, manipulate you, bait you into reaction, and still stay composed. Because silence doesn't mean defeat. It means clarity. It means you've mastered the art of not needing to win every argument. You've outgrown the ego wars. You've graduated from emotional warfare. Real power doesn't always roar. Sometimes it just watches. Imagine this. Someone insults you in public. They want a reaction to knock you off balance, to make you prove your worth through noise. But you don't flinch. You look at them, not with anger, not with fear, but with that quiet, almost unnerving steadiness. You say, nothing. In that silence, you've said everything. You've told the world, I'm not moved by chaos. My peace is not for sale. I decide when and how I respond. That's authority. Not borrowed from ego, but rooted in inner stillness. And here's the paradox. The calmer you are, the more unsettling you become to those who rely on emotional games. Your stillness becomes a mirror, and people start seeing their own instability reflected back at them. That's why calm people are often misunderstood. They trigger others, not because they do something wrong, but because they reveal what others haven't mastered. So let them misunderstand you. Let them call you cold, emotionless, indifferent. Because in a world addicted to reactivity, your calm is rebellion. Your pause is dominance. Your silence is sacred. Let them yell. Let them spin. Let them throw energy at you, hoping to shake your frame. But you don't perform. You don't react. You choose. That's not indifference. That's power under full command. So the next time someone tries to pull you into the fire, smile gently, breathe deeply, and let your calm remind them of who they're dealing with. Because a calm man isn't weak, he's just too powerful to be provoked. Let's take a moment to zoom out. You've just walked through a full Stoic blueprint, 9 psychological tactics designed not to make you emotionless, but emotionally unshakable. Not passive, not numb, but strategic. You've built a system, one that doesn't depend on others behaving right, but on you mastering your own internal reactions. Let's trace the arc. You started by learning the power of pausing, not reacting immediately, not flinching out of fear, but owning the space between stimulus and response. In that space you chose clarity over chaos, presence over panic. That was your first shift in power. Then came the emotional audit. You stopped being afraid of your triggers and started interrogating them. Because what you don't understand will always control you. But once you name it, you're free to reprogram it. From there, you claimed your frame. You stopped outsourcing your identity to someone else's projections. You decided, my truth isn't up for public vote. That's Stoic. That's dangerous. Because when your sense of self becomes non-negotiable, you remove 90% of their leverage. Then came the sacrifice of closure. You stopped chasing final words, confessions, apologias. Because peace isn't something you extract from others, it's something you build within. You walked into emotional warfare and didn't need a last word, just a clean exit. You saw manipulation for what it is, a game of strings. But you're no longer a puppet. You stepped back, watched the play, and rewrote your script. Then came stillness, quiet, control. You stopped trying to prove yourself. You let your silence be your sword. Your boundaries became calm and consistent, not reactive. Not built on trauma, but forged in clarity. You stopped personalizing everything. Because what they do isn't always about you, it's about them. Their trauma, their ego, their pain. And finally, you embraced calm as authority. Not because you don't feel, but because you no longer leak power with every emotion. Let's be clear. This is not softness. This is not detachment. This is emotional war strategy. You've built an inner fortress, not made of steel, but of awareness. And when you stack all these together, you don't just become more controlled, you become unreadable, untouchable, emotionally sovereign. And that's where power lives. In the man or woman who can be provoked but not moved, who can feel but not fold. Because, here's the truth, most people miss they can provoke you, but they can't move you unless you give permission. And now, you don't. You've revoked that access. You've ended the contract. Your mind is no longer for rent. Your peace is no longer for sale. This is the new power game, and you just leveled up. But this journey doesn't stop here. If you're ready to take emotional mastery to the next level, it's time to talk about narrative control. Because in the next video, you'll learn how to become unshakable in any room by owning the frame before anyone else sets it. This is where psychology meets strategy, where silence becomes persuasion, and perception becomes power. There's a kind of peace that doesn't come from the world going quiet. It comes from you choosing not to get loud. And that kind of peace is built not in the heat of conflict, but in the cold mornings where you choose discipline over indulgence, not when people treat you well, but when you hold your calm while they misunderstand you, not in applause, but in silence, not in agreement, but in clarity. The Stoics weren't aiming to feel nothing. They aimed to master what they feel so they could use it, not be used by it. That's where the blueprint begins. Each day, you train. Not your body first, but your attention. Your ability to pause, observe, and redirect. You don't rush to label every discomfort as a threat. You don't assume every silence is rejection. You learn that stillness is not the absence of life, but the entrance to awareness. You begin to see triggers not as enemies, but as data points. That comment, that stare, that unanswered message. Instead of asking, "Why do they do this to me?" you ask, "What does this reveal in me?" And then you begin the practice. A 7-day inner calm challenge. Not to prove anything to the world, but to prove something to yourself. Each day, one goal. Don't react emotionally. Not because you're suppressing, but because you're choosing selective response over compulsive reaction. Keep a small journal. 3 columns. Trigger. What happened? Thought, what story did my mind create? Stoic response. What would Marcus or Epictetus say? It's not about perfection. It's about pattern recognition. So that over time, when chaos knocks, your nervous system doesn't open the door. This is the blueprint. The modern Stoic follows daily discipline, creates inner peace. Stillness gives birth to clarity. Selective reactions. protect your life force. It's not about becoming numb. It's about becoming immovable. Because when you finally stop reacting to everything, you start commanding something far more powerful: yourself. There's a quiet place in you, not made of words, not made of logic, but of presence. It's the place that doesn't need to win the argument, because it has already won peace. It doesn't seek attention, because it knows the power of detachment. It doesn't rush to explain, because it's rooted in truth, not approval. That place is your inner calm. And it's not weak. It's not passive. It's not indifference. It's sacred. And like a small flame in a storm, it needs to be shielded. Not with force, but with awareness. Not with walls, but with wisdom. The world will always offer chaos. Always. But whether you receive it, whether you mirror it, that's a decision only you get to make. Calm is your responsibility, not the world's gift. Let that sink in. Because if you don't protect your peace, someone else's chaos will become your daily diet. And you'll forget what silence feels like, what clear thinking sounds like, what it means to move from center, not reaction. So, before this video ends, take a moment. Breathe. Think of a recent moment, maybe this week, when someone pushed a button, when you could have snapped back. But instead, you chose silence. You chose stillness. Comment below with that moment. Not to brag, but to remind yourself that you're changing. And if you know someone who's sensitive, deeply feeling, often overwhelmed, but quietly seeking peace, share this video with them. It might be the blueprint they never had, the calm they've been trying to build without instructions. And remember this, you don't need to match the noise of the world. You just need to anchor in your own frequency. The still one, the strong one, the stoic one.